My next guest is Craig Stellpflug, and he is the author of One Man, One Woman. It's God's Original Design for Marriage. I love the book. I've read the book. You've been on my radio show. You've had your own radio show. Tell everybody a little bit about this book and what the meaning of it is behind it and everything.
Well, first of all, Carol, thanks for having me here. I'm so excited for your show.
Thank you. Me too.
And the book is about God's original design for marriage. So what was in God's mind when he created the earth? And what was in his mind when he put marriage out there? What's it all about? So I actually take a deep dive into the Hebrew and into the Greek in this book to show you what was in God's heart.
Tell them about you and what makes you an aficionado on being able to do that.
Wow. Well, it started with 26 years of marriage that ended in my wife dying. So I became a widower, and then I also remarried a beautiful, wonderful woman. And through all this, I've also done a lot of marriage counseling, Christian marriage counseling. And I've learned so much that I couldn't remember what I learned. So I finally this is actually a collection of notes and teachings that I've converted into a book. So each chapter is about 1,000 words long, a pretty easy read, as you found out.
I absolutely love it. You know what I love the best about this book is that the way that you took the Bible and the verses in the Bible and you actually explain them in depth of what they really, really mean. The book is called One Man, One Woman, and Craig, you wrote this book, and when I read the book, the way that I felt when I did it, it gave me a sense of pride of who I am and who, you know, even though my marriage didn't last, but, you know, it gave me a sense of understanding of really what we're really here for in the first place.
Well, and you told me that it gave you hope, and that's a big deal. And this book is actually a treasure hunt. So everything you need to live life and to find salvation is on the surface of the Bible. You can read, you can find out about God's salvation, but if you want gems and jewels and treasures, you have to dig.
I love that part when you said that.
And then you have to refine, and it takes work. So this is a lot of treasure hunting in this book.
Now, I know you can get it at Amazon.com, and I know the information is below. This book is something that almost everyone should read, and even if you're just getting married, what a great book to give to somebody as a gift. I know that there's been a little bit of controversy with the book, which is amazing. I couldn't even believe it when you were telling me that. A lot of people, you said, ask you if this book is sort of anti-gay.
Correct. Yes, well, first of all, it's been banned for promotion on Twitter and labeled as hate. But I will say this, if they'd read the book before they banned it, they would have said, this isn't hate.
In any way.
Right, there's a big controversy going on, and this book, I'm not anti-gay. And gay people are not anti-heterosexual marriage. So you don't have to be anti-something if you are pro-something. I am for the Christian marriage, conservative Christian marriage, and the reasons that God thinks is so important are outlined in this book.
Well, I'll tell you something. It says one man and one woman, but it doesn't really matter if it's two men or two women, really. It's the same principle, isn't it?
Well, some of it's going to be the same. Right now there's a big controversy going on in California about an assembly bill that prohibits the sale of my book if it's used to reform
I see what you mean.
Say a homosexual person, and if a therapist is trying to convert them. However, it's kind of one-sided. Now, the reason this bill is there is because the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transvestite, that the whole genre, they're at risk. They're a population at risk. They have like 3 times the suicide rate of heterosexual people. They are up to 30% more likely to be beat up at school, literally. And their life expectancy is lower, partly because of the suicide rates, but their life expectancy in that community is unfortunately back to the year 1871. So if you lived in 1871, you would probably died before you're 65. So this bill is kind of trying to protect that vulnerable population, and I get that.
When I love the book, when I read the book, because it really just, it hits home. Don't you think that, well, when you have reread it, and don't you think that it hits home for a lot of people?
Well, it hit home for me.
Absolutely.
And it really solidified my views and my heart. And it was a big question around me, surrounding me, and in our church, and in the community with our kids. I had a daughter going to college, and the liberal college thinking is quite different than some of this.
Mm-hmm. Well, some of the things that you have, even, I want to bring up the book a little bit again, even the book, the cover of the book has a lot of meaning. And I asked you, I think the one time when I saw you before, was if that was you and your wife there on the cover. But I think the tree even has meaning, if I remember correctly.
Right. Well, my daughter was 17 at the time she painted this, where I commissioned her to paint this. I said, this is what I'd like, and she did this painting. So the tree, the website is oneman.onewoman.today. So the tree and the people in the picture are today. And if you look at the picture, you will see on one side a man and a woman, and on the other side is the old serpent.
Yes, and the serpent's there. I was looking at it when I forgot to mention that, when I saw that, and I looked down and I saw it hanging out of the tree.
Right.
What's your favorite part of the book?
My favorite part was where I talk about the fine china vessel. Because in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7, it talks about giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel. That's what it says, but that's not what it means. So I dive into the Greek to break apart that word, the Greek word, and we find out that the wife is the fine china vessel. She's the one you want to protect and put in a place of honor.
I agree with that.
Absolutely. And if the husbands will get that one thing.
Wouldn't it make life so much better? We would never have divorce.
We wouldn't. The wives would just be crazy in love with their men.
Wouldn't that be nice? You know, one of the things that I also remember, if I'm not mistaken, there was a part here where you talked a little bit about Adam's rib. And
oh, yes.
How did I, remind me of how that went?
Well, there I go into the Hebrew. And the Hebrew word, where it says that God took from Adam's rib, the Hebrew word is Selah, T-S-E-L-A. And it actually means the side of Adam. And the Greek word, or the Hebrew word for rib is a totally different word. It's A-L-A. So God took from one side of man, and she's to be his helpmeet, it says in Genesis
that's what
chapter 2.
I remember. That stood out for me.
And that's the Hebrew word ezer kenegdo. It's a rescuer. And it's the equal opposite mirror image of the husband. She takes up the slack where he's lacking, and she makes him complete. And when Adam woke from his sleep, he said, alas, here's a woman made from my flesh from my flesh, bone from my bone. And even that has a Hebrewism in it. It's a musical Hebrewism, and it's like the tempo is building and building. And then all of a sudden the concert breaks out and everybody stands up and plays their instrument, and it's just the crash of the cymbals, and it's the at last, because he'd been searching for a suitable helper.
I love that part of the book too, because it has meant, like, I'm a woman, I'm meant to be here right by my mate's side.
Absolutely, and that does not make you any less than the man. It does not, and I cover that also in the book.
Well, you know what, I want to thank you so much for being with us here today, and you know, I'm excited about this book for you. I know that you're having some issues with all of that, what's going on in California, but what would be your final words for everybody today?
Well, my final word is, even if you are not a heterosexual Christian person, you could benefit from this book.
Everybody should read it. It's a wonderful book, whether or not you're getting married, you've been married. It's a fabulous book.
All right, if you have any questions about Christianity and the Bible, and there's a lot of odd thoughts out there, and how God, it could be a God of hate. And hopefully I've dealt with that in this book, to where you could read this book and see that God's design for marriage actually promotes him and salvation.
It's a wonderful book.